Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds No Investing podcast. I am your co host, Chris 70, along with Jamie Bateman. And today, before I even introduce Jamie, I'm all excited because we are going to go through Jamie's goals for 2021. And he doesn't realize this yet, but whatever his goal is, I'm going to basically make him double it anyways, because Jamie's easy to peer pressure. Uh, so, Jamie, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Chris?
Good. You
Yeah,
nervous? You excited? You
I'm
know,
excited.
I feel like you come to the principal's office, with me today, where I'm going to basically beat you up a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't. I may have mentioned this before, but I don't love putting. I like to do what I say I'm going to do, so which is good, right? But that can lead me to be a little less committal on things because I don't want to put all these big goals out there and not follow through.
Well,
So
the fun thing for me is I'm going to hold you accountable to them, and I've got no skin in this game, so I'm
right.
just going to beat the living hell out of you for the next 12 months. With your wife, you can, of course, there's give and take all the time with that, or mostly she gives and you take it.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, but with me, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to beat on Jamie for the next 12 months is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, there's not a lot of risk there for you. Um,
Yeah. So Jamie, before we get going, as always, what are some of your trials and tribulations from this week?
couple things to mention. One, got an email from. Oh yeah, well I was saving that for
Okay.
last.
For those who watch this on video, I'm like, raise my hands like in joy for cheer to look
Excellent
at that.
news on that front. The 10 New York loans that we've talked about several times on previous episodes were actually boarded with FCI. So um, some people listening to this probably think, so what? It took a couple months to get your loans boarded. No big deal. They have no idea. It's just such incompetence for the servicer that had 8 of these 10 loans. Unbelievable. But that previously, now FCI has them. They're all boarded. They actually show up on the portal, and Chris doesn't have to sue any servicers. So that's good.
Yeah, the way I compare it is if you have kids and you ever gone on like a field trip with so I have a son, and I remember going to the Washington Zoo for like a first or second grade field trip. Have 20 kids in your group and take them on a field trip and try and keep them all together. That's what it felt like trying to get these loans boarded. So anyone that's been through that.
Just total lack of competence. I don't know if the servicer has never transferred a loan out or
It made it pretty clear they hadn't.
like I told you, though, I haven't personally transferred a loan out from a servicing company, but I can read. Anyway, um, that's a good, good thing though. Those are boarded, and now we can actually full speed ahead, address the issues there. But the other thing, which is also servicer related, that I was going to bring up is turns out it was just a miscommunication, but we're going through our whole forced place insurance, portfolio and kind of revisiting that and trying to streamline everything. And one servicer, it was Allied, told me that I would have to, if I was going to do my own FPI, that I'd have to take my loans from them. In other words, they wouldn't service my loans if I didn't go with either borrower insurance or Allied's forced place insurance. It's a whole big thing, but Beth got it all straightened out and we're good to go. So turns out it was a miscommunication.
Yeah, and you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I just left them to do the forced place insurance because they're trying to resolve. That's the one area that I see in this business that I struggle with, I think, the most. And I love Allied, I love Madison, but and it's really accounting. And like I send Madison um, my advances for insurance or taxes or whatever it may be. And then like I get an email from the account manager yesterday, like, hey, can you send us the bills on the forced place insurance for his property so we can add it to the escrow analysis? I'm like, I've been sending them for the last 8 months and I noticed they're not in there. Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
that, and then on the flip side with Allied, when they send you like, if you get paid $300 a month, all of a sudden you're going to get paid $260. And it's like, well, servicing is only 15. And what's the other, $35, $25. And it's like, oh, forced place. Well, it's like, what was, on this one versus that one. And, it's like,
Yeah.
you'll learn,
Yeah.
unfortunately, the
I
hard way.
mean, and who knows, maybe I'll regret, we haven't actually made the move yet as far as switching the FPI over, but, you know, people ask, why would you want to do that? But first of all, it's cheaper. It's less expensive. Yes, it gets billed back to the borrower, but we all know that's not always true. And secondly, it's better coverage. So even though they're both through JB Lloyd, it's less expensive, which should keep loans that are performing, have a higher chance of performing, and it's better coverage. So if we're already sending out these borrower letters on, with other loans with other servicers, why not just do it for the ones I have with Allied? So we'll
Yeah,
see. I totally get the servicer like Madison. They require you. They're now asking to see the FPI letters and proof that you're being compliant, right? That makes sense. But I don't understand a servicer saying we're not going to service your loans unless you buy our insurance.
exactly.
So yeah, so those are a couple of things I've been working on. It always seems to come back to the servicer.
Hmm. So are are you complete?
I'm done. Yes.
Okay, I was grabbing
Go
a
ahead.
big
Go ahead,
big of
sir.
water. Like, thank you, sir. Very kind of you today. Let's see. So people may have seen this one on Facebook. I have a land contract that the borrower, we filed legal back in February. It's the fourth time this borrower has defaulted. And this time around, I'm like, they're like, hey, can we make a payment, reinstate? I'm like, no. I'm like, not this time around. So I get an email from the attorney who says the borrower assigned the land contract to another individual who's selling the house to another person. And the title company is like going through all this paperwork and so forth. And they emailed me paperwork. And by the way, I'm like trying to find a notary with witnesses in today's environment is
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got this paperwork on Tuesday and I finally got an appointment today with the bank because like the UPS store didn't have enough people to get witnesses and stuff like that. So I got an appointment today. But I'm looking at the paperwork in the Indiana, the sales disclosure form, the SDF form that you have to, provide as part of,
Mm-hmm.
transfer. I'm looking, I'm like, wait a second, this is the wrong property. This is a property that I already have a note on, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden I look at the name and the name is a borrower who I have on another property. And this is
This is the name of the buyer
the
of
buyer.
this.
Yes, the buyer of this CFD or the
Right.
property who's paying it off
Right.
is one of my borrowers.
And they're
And
behind too. Is that right?
it's so you remember that multifamily deal I had in Indiana where I got the forfeiture and it got canceled and
Mm-hmm.
because they had more equity and we ended up working something out with them?
Yeah.
It's that
Yep.
guy.
Wow.
So I'm, I was so I called the attorney and stuff to see, certain options I had and stuff like that. And he's like, because I'm like, it's CFD. I really don't have to sign the paperwork till I get the money. And he's like, well, the title company's got the money in escrow. You kind of got to sign it. Like,
Mm.
okay. But I did reach out to the guy and basically said, hey, long time no, not hearing from you, but hey, since we've made that agreement, and this is a commercial loan, so
Mm-hmm.
there's much different rules compared to consumer laws and stuff. Reach out and stuff and be like, hey, I haven't seen a payment in 2 months. Oh, by the way, so he's like, call me. So it's gonna be a fun phone call. Um,
Wonder if he's one of those borrowers like, well, you and Gail and I have
mhm.
had where they kind of pop up all over the
Well,
place.
well, this one, I believe the guy was like, so it's him and like his brother, and his brother's the one local who manages it, and then he's, you know, out somewhere in the West Coast. I think he's like a doctor or something, and
Hmm.
I honestly don't think I think his brother is playing him and doesn't have no idea like
Hmm.
this property is like completely a disaster. And that's one of the reasons I want out my name is, I mean, it's, it's not habitable. It's got so many roof leaks and they're like, oh, we're going to try and file an insurance claim. I'm like, what, for a 60-year-old roof that leaks,
Mm-hmm.
good luck. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, that's pretty
so
wild.
yeah, so that was one. I'm trying to close on 20 of the 60 assets, which actually probably ended up getting pared down to like 14 as part of due diligence. So for people out there, when you think about it, that's six assets that, probably spent, probably about $1,500 of money at the end of the day that kind of, goes by the wayside. So when people starting out, you got to remember, your hit rates, even after offer accepted, is not 100%. So, um, you know,
Yeah,
it's,
I've got a question for you. I mean,
yep.
uh, um, these are going to be, you're going to have to guess, I would assume, but um, what percentage would you say of offers do you get accepted? And then what percentage of loans do you actually close on of offers that are, once you're under agreement?
Actually have that data, because
Okay.
what I do is every year, me being the analytical type person I
Mm-hmm.
am, I go through. So I create a budget at the end of the year, and I assume 10%.
Would
It,
get accepted?
10%, no, 10%. I spend. So
Oh, gotcha.
if I buy 10, one basically 1 out of 10 gets thrown away.
During
Actually, I'm
the,
sorry, 20% is what I. But
that,
so I actually budget every year that,
hmm.
okay, if I'm buying 100 notes this year, I'm gonna have 20 times, so I'm gonna have roughly, call it, whether it be 5,000 or $7,000 in lost opportunity costs for that year. Because every year I do a full blown budget, like I'm a business that says, okay, what are my expenses? How much do I spend? Like I know down to the T how much I spend on every single software. All of that goes in there. And the reason I used to do that was what we talked about previously, is when you do JV deals, you should charge an administration fee.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how I came up with my number was, okay, I have my bookkeeper, I have my Infusionsoft, I have my lost opportunity, I have my telephone, my computer, my internet, everything thing that you spend money on, your general counsel that you just, dealing with contracts and stuff, all the stuff that doesn't get charged to deals, you got to figure out how much is that a year. And if that's
Mm-hmm.
$24,000 a year, and you're going to do 24 deals, then you should cover roughly $1,000 per deal to cover some of those costs.
So you think if you have 10 loans under contract, you'll close on 8 or 9 of them across,
Yep.
after,
Yeah.
taking everything into consideration.
Yeah. I went way past the question you asked, by the way. I
No,
apologize.
I think for newer note investors, it can be one, it's like, what is an acceptable reason to back out of a deal, kind of, and then what's my number, what do the numbers look like? And then pre-bid, or pre agreement, how many loans do you bid on versus how many do you end up closing on? That's a whole different topic.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. And I can see where you're going right now, Jamie. If you want to go
I'm
into
trying to
that,
delay.
yeah, trying to delay. You want to do an episode on that, which we could go into and answer, that's a good
No,
actually
no,
episode.
yeah, it is a different topic. I just
Yeah.
think, like I'm working with somebody now who's maybe closing on their first note, and that, they have it under agreement, I think, but then he talked to an attorney about a particular state and CFDs there, and the attorney's like, "Don't buy it," So is that acceptable to back out? You know, um,
One of these I'm looking at has a lost note affidavit, but the lost note affidavit was not written properly. Now they filed for, it's been filed for foreclosure. It's made its way pretty far down the path. My attorney's like, and there's other, there's this, the property BPO came in at about half. The borrower is extremely difficult. The borrower sued, attempted to sue the lender already. So, you combine all that. And I went back to the lender and said, hey, look, I'm going to pass. And I'm like, oh, why? And I'm like, well, because here's one, two, A, B,
mhm.
C and stuff. And I'm like, the risk is just not, I said,
Yeah.
worth it where, from this perspective now, in the offer that I would put in for this thing, and this is give you an idea, this is probably this is 6-figure asset acquisition. So it's not like a $10,000 one. I'll roll the dice on it. This is $100,000+ loan
Hmm.
acquisition price. So, that's, not worth that risk. But
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar one, and I'm not trying to delay, but
yeah.
I backed out of one a few weeks ago too, where it was
Mhm.
similar thing where it's like essentially 10 different reasons I don't like this deal anymore. Was any one of them incurable? Probably not,
Mhm.
but just when you big
Yeah.
picture, no thanks.
Mhm.
So
So you ready?
let's do this.
Okay. How many do you have?
I have 4 goals.
Okay. So promo, please. I don't have a little audible audio thing. It's too far. I can't reach it. There you go. So Mr. Jamie Bateman, what is your first goal for 2021?
So for my note business, obviously,
Yes.
um, we'll leave the personal goals out of it. Um, 100K in profit from notes for 2021.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it's pretty straightforward whether I meet it or not, right?
Yep. So
And
easy.
that's factoring in all those expenses you just talked about.
Yep.
And
So, so you want when Debbie does your books the end of next year on that P&L statement, you want, I think it's the left side to be 100 grand bigger than the right side.
you got it.
There we go. Okay.
You think I can do it?
Absolutely. When you're starting your fund, I already, you don't realize this, but the attorney already knows that you do, you know, I'm like, oh, he's going to call you. I keep poking him.
I
So
did briefly mention it to him once
yeah,
too, but
he knows it's coming.
yeah.
So
Well, that's, yeah, we need to talk about that too. I know that came up,
mhm.
I think it was after we stopped recording, but
Yep.
we were talking the other night
Hmm.
with Carson Ferris about funds versus other ways to do things. But
Yes. Hmm.
um, so yeah, all of these goals are all tied together, obviously.
Okay. So here's one of the things that I'll mention that I'll throw into this mix was, you know, that is a lofty goal because you see these gurus promoting, oh, you can make, you know, I don't know, 100,000, 250,000, whatever it is, your first year in notes. And the reality is that is complete BS. You know, you
Hmm.
think about it, if you want to make 10% on your money, you need to basically have
Hmm.
2.5 million at that point in time, you know, and that's with
Yeah.
your own, you know, that's with other people. If you have your own money, you could probably get away with, you know, a million, you know, whatever, or for 250 grand, you could probably get away with maybe 1,500,000 or something along those lines. But
Hmm.
oh, other people's money, you know, if you're making 10% on that, you know, the 15%, that's good. So I look at, you know, Jamie, have you figured out, okay, how much money you need to raise to get to that 100K?
No. Short answer. Um, I need, so my second goal is to start a fund.
Okay.
And we've almost talked around it, but that's my second goal at some point in 2021 to start a fund. What that's going to look like, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
um, I do think also, just to back on the first goal, I've been putting any earnings back into the business like we've talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a while. I mean, I think we're coming up on 3 years that I've actually technically had the business going, but it's really
Mm-hmm.
only been a little over 2 where I've been
Yep.
pretty active with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while to get up and running. I mean, if you're selling partials on performers, you're just deferring that cash flow to go out and buy more notes.
Mm-hmm.
And then if, I don't know, what would you say is your average turn time for a non-performer approximately? Any idea?
I'd say it probably is 18 months. You know,
Yeah.
it's
So
it's over a year typically.
over a year. So if you're buying non-performing assets in January, of 2020, well, I haven't sold that many yet,
Right.
so it
Mm-hmm.
just takes a while. So I
Yep.
am optimistic on several assets that I already own that I'll be able to make a profit.
Yep. So, and that's the
So,
interesting thing because what you did, you know, for next year, you know, you got this goal, but it's really based on a lot of it is based off of what you have or what you acquired this year. You know, because
exactly.
even if you start a fund next year, you know,
Hmm.
again, depending on how you structure it, you know, it's going to take several months to get it set up. It's going to take several months to buy the assets and everything else. I mean, you're looking at 6 months already. So you're already cut, you know, you started
Hmm.
today, you cut half the year off basically. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. So part of that 100K is going to have to be from notes I already own for sure.
yep. So,
And then starting a fund. So that's the second goal. I mean, we
mhm.
beat that one to death, I think. Um, you got anything on that? Or
Yeah. So I was going to, are you making the, you know, proverbial shift from JV deals into a fund? Or are you
I
still
haven't
with your,
started. I haven't actually. I've had people approach me about JV deals.
mhm.
You know, within the last 6 months, several people, but I actually haven't even started one. Probably in the whole second half of 2020. So
Mhm.
um, it, it's tough to answer because I do think there are going to be more non-performers out there.
Mm-hmm.
than there have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to pivot in that direction, and I do
Mm-hmm.
think JV deals work better, joint ventures work better on non-performers. So um, we'll see.
By the way, I completely forgot a trial and tribulation thing that I spent most of the week on that I'll bring up later. Let me ask this question. Is one of your goals, do you have a number of how many assets tied?
So I feel like I did not text you my goals, by the
No, you
way.
didn't.
No, but my next goal, my third goal, is to purchase 75 new assets. Um, Initially I had a number of total assets I wanted to have under management,
Mm-hmm.
for I guess the end of 2021. But
Mm-hmm.
um, in order to make that first goal of profiting, I got to sell some assets. So um, I thought buying 75 notes in 2021 is aggressive, but doable. We've
Mm-hmm.
currently got 35, um, and a lot of our systems are in place, and it's kind of a plug and play. Throw them into the machine a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and go from there. So saying that out loud, buying 75 notes, if I'd said that last year, it would have blown my mind. But
Mm-hmm.
now I think I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So
So let's say it's 75 notes. And what do you think the average value will be on them? UPB.
yeah, that's a good question. Let's say 40.
Okay. So that's 40,000. That's $3 million in assets under management. That's a good year. Well, no, and you look at,
Yeah.
okay, you get 3 million assets under management. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, basically, say you have it for half the year. The average of them is half the year. Okay. Which is 6 months. We'll just say 1.5 million. And then you make, basically 6% on those or 7%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's your $100,000.
So my numbers aren't, they're realistic as far as working with each other. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I like it. You just have to get me there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got about, I'm looking over at my screen right now because I got my mortgage office open, and I've actually got another 20 loans getting boarded today that I bought last month. So which will put me, so I'm at 250 right now. Plus, if I close on 20 or 15, 260, so I'll probably hit right around 300 by the end of the year. And that will be numbers wise for principal balance. I don't have the full because it transferred, but it would be somewhere, I think, over 10 million. So
Wow. And
I have a,
because you're still closing on 40 other assets, right?
yeah. So I got due diligence. I got to wrap up hopefully this weekend so I can close on those next week. But of those, I
Nice.
mean, it'll probably drop, five out of there. Or, some will drop out of there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so when you look at the numbers and again, this is how people should look at things. Okay, I want to buy 75 assets, basically at 40,000, which is $3 million. Okay, if I spend 40 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar, I need 1.2 to 1.5 million in money. And then,
Mm-hmm.
basically, how much can I make, off of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you make, 1.5 million, if you can make 7% personally on that for that year, there's your 100 grand.
Yeah.
So,
I'm excited.
yep. So, what's your next one?
So the fourth goal is a little bit different. Um,
Grow hair?
it yeah, right. It, I still got hair, but it's
Mhm,
quite gray at this point.
mhm,
My daughter actually said something the other day when I walked downstairs.
mhm,
Oh my gosh, your hair is gray. I'm like, thanks.
mhm.
I blamed it on the sweater though.
Yeah, I hadn't shaved in like 3 days earlier this week, and like I realized like I can't grow a beard for the life of me. I still got a baby face, but when it started coming in, it was very gray. I was like, shit, I'm getting old.
She doesn't realize she's the one causing it. Um, so my fourth goal is to hire a business coach. Now, again, some of these are kind of, not super specific. I don't have a date that I'm planning to do this by, but I've given it a good bit of thought, and um, I'm not talking about spending 50 grand on a coach or something, but
Mhm,
um, one of the things I want to do is, look at this. I think this will force me to look at everything even more
Mhm.
as a business. Um, and specifically, I want to work with somebody who's doesn't really know notes very well.
Mhm.
Um, it's not to say that a note investor isn't good at business either, but I just feel like with, you know, the group and all the sharing we've got going on, there are a good number of experts out there that I can continue to learn from on the note side of things. But we've got a rental portfolio and some other things going on that um, I think if I hire someone who's not an expert in notes, that can really help me to kind of stop working so much in the business and work a lot more on the business. Um, I was listening to keep for some reason I've gone back to the Bigger Pockets podcast recently, and but actually not so much the real estate one, but more they have one on
Mhm.
Sundays now that's more about
Like the money one or something.
well they've got a money one, a business one, a real estate one. Now they're doing a one on it's on mindset, more on mindset stuff,
Mhm.
but it obviously crosses into real estate and business and all that stuff. But um, it's a they had Dan Sullivan on, who's a strategic coach. It's a
Mhm.
high level business program,
Mhm.
and I'm not thinking of going down that road. But
Mhm.
it was interesting when Brandon Turner asked him like about hiring, you know, and Brandon's thinking like you got to hire to delegate and grow your business, and makes sense, right? And Dan Sullivan, who is this really successful coach and business person, says, "Well, I just realized I'm terrible at hiring," and so he doesn't even hire. So it's like
Mhm.
he's taking the um, you know uh, delegate or remove yourself from the business even one step further. So it's just an interesting um, way to look at it. It's not only that I mean, his business hires people, but he doesn't personally do it because that's not what he's good at.
Yeah.
So the point I'm getting to is, you know, trying to focus more on what I'm actually good at. Not saying I'm not good at notes, but I think I'm good at leadership and good at management and that kind of thing. Trying to trying to scale the business that way. So I think working with a coach who can really instill principles, business principles, and life principles that aren't necessarily specific to IRR or yield or UPB can really help me to kind of scale the way I want to.
Mhm.
So we'll see.
Interesting. The biggest thing I'll tell you about, like, if you get a business coach,
Hmm.
is, I know a lot of people, and not by no means am I saying this is you.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people who get the business coach.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, great, I got a business coach, but they take like the information and they end up doing nothing with it. And
Hmm.
it's like, you're spending all this money, and if you want
Yeah.
to, follow through, follow through. You can't,
Right.
you know, can't, you know, not do it, and you need kind of somebody there to push you as well. Still would tell you, on that front, I recommend to try it. Is I started doing Mind Valley,
Hmm.
and I mean they've got Keith Ferrazzi, who's written many books about networking, and basically, which, I mean, raising money is networking, and
Hmm.
you know from that perspective. And he's got people on there who have trained either professional athletes or people who run marathons or people climb Mount Everest. I mean, people who are just high performing individuals. And I'm taking one right now that's pretty cool because it's about it's the habit of ferocity. And it's really about getting in the zone. Like, when we say the zone, like, if you ever played sports,
Hmm.
there's those days where you're unconscious, like,
Yeah.
it's basically, it's a certain mental state, and it's been studied that there is certain things you can do to trigger that. And when you're in that zone, you can perform 5 times more productive than you
Hmm.
are normally. So think about, from a notes perspective or a business management perspective, if you can get yourself in the zone and get 5 times more done in a day than you typically do, think about that.
Yeah.
You get done in one day what most people get done in a week.
Yeah.
So
So that the Mind Valley stuff, is it's a self-paced
it's
course thing?
self-paced, and it's like
Hmm.
20 minutes a day.
Hmm.
And it's like $600 for the year. So it's $50 a month. And, and that's why I kind of, my wife got it for me for anniversary. And at first, I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I started looking at some of these people and researching
Mhm.
them. And then like, you know, I'm like, this is actually pretty cool. And it's one of those things too, where, you can start implementing some of this stuff. And it's like, okay, if you don't follow through with it, well, you just spent $600. You didn't spend 10 grand on a coach or something along those lines.
Yeah, right. And again, I don't know exactly how it's going to look, but um, I've done different,
Mhm.
used to do CrossFit, right? You wouldn't be
Yep.
able to tell by looking at me right now. But, CrossFit is really, it's controversial, whatever, people got injuries and everything, but it was very impactful for a lot of people. And the reason for that, or one of the main reasons, is just the accountability and the group, atmosphere, and you're pushing each other. I don't know if I ever did a CrossFit exercise that I hadn't done previously before I started doing CrossFit, right? So there's nothing magical about, the reps and sets and the exercises or any of that stuff. It's mostly about accountability
Mhm.
and pushing each other. So I don't expect to find a business coach who's some, just knows everything and he's
Mhm.
holding out on with all these secrets. It's more about having a weekly meeting, or
Yeah.
thinking differently, mindset stuff, and oh, I've got some homework I got to get done, for this to actually implement in my business, on my business. And so we'll see. Maybe it's just a more of a informal, mastermind group or something like that. But um, I can tell you it's very easy for me to get caught up in asset management, and because there's always stuff to do, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure you've probably got a lot to do today with your notes.
And my full-time job.
So do I, and your full-time job. um, but it's real easy to get caught up in that. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things you told me a little while ago was people spend too much time,
Mhm.
checking the servicer's portal to see which borrower's paid today, or
Mhm.
it's like just trying to kind of expand things mentally, I guess,
Mhm.
is where I'm headed.
Good. So
So
accountability partner is going to be important too.
yeah.
So, yep. And that was kind of like what my whole, when we did my goals was, for next year is trying to, get other people. And that's one things like,
Hmm.
when I do the training, it's going to be kind of in a group, but people are going to be, each other's accountability partner. Cause I think that's one of the biggest things where people sometimes need that little push because you're not always at a level of like yesterday afternoon, kind of, we talked offline before this. I was not in any mood to get anything done yesterday afternoon. And it was one of those things where it's like, and you have those days, but you still just got to push through it or just get your mindset, focus to get your mindset reframed for the next day or whatever it may be. So
Yeah,
cool.
definitely.
So I'm a little disappointed though in one of your goals that's not
to
on
have
there.
to have Emily come on the podcast.
Yes, that was one of them. So I'm disappointed because again, it goes back to mindset. If you don't have it down, written down as a goal, it's not going to happen. So
Is that the one you're talking about?
yes, it was. So that
Okay.
was why I would have thrown a fifth goal of Jamie. Is also going to get Emily on the podcast as well because for those that don't know, Emily is really the brains behind the business from that perspective. So
Exactly.
uh, Jamie just likes to come on a podcast
Yeah.
and talk. So, by the way, how is
Right.
speaking of talking?
I,
Have you
I think that
spoken with your good friend in the lovely the Tar Heel state?
um, I almost threw that in as when I thought about that when you were talking about your borrower, your
Yeah.
CFD borrower.
Mhm.
Um, I keep redirecting her to Madison,
Yep.
and we'll see. She emailed me the other day, and I didn't actually even respond. I just forwarded it to Madison because North Carolina can be pretty tricky
Yep.
with borrower
Mhm.
contact. At this point, it's like if you actually go back and look, we deferred. It was either 2 or 3 months in,
Mhm.
once when COVID hit, and then basically, I think she's playing the servicer and me against each other, and kind of like
Mhm.
mom and dad kind of thing, and just trying to delay. So I had it set up last week where I said, okay, as of this past Monday, 4 days ago, if she hasn't put down $1,000, just set the account for full reinstatement,
Hmm.
which is almost $5,000, I think. And actually, it might be closer to four. But
Hmm.
so, end of the day, I'm just, I'm done. I have this is a joint venture deal too, so it's not just, you know, it's not just me. It's not just my
Hmm.
money. Um, so she just needs to make up her mind.
Yeah. Speaking, it's funny because I've got one similar, same state, where the borrower, he's using it as a rental, and it's clear that whoever's living there isn't paying. But now I had the attorney involved, and then North Carolina, he's dealing with Madison, and Madison's, oh, he's living there. I'm like, he's not living there. Well, he says he is. I'm like, what's the mailing address on the statement every month? Oh, it's not that one. I'm like, yes. Oh, he
Mm-hmm.
said he moved back in, and after his girlfriend left, I said his girlfriend didn't leave. She burnt a man alive and is in prison for life.
My
Um, yeah.
gosh.
So yeah. So
Wow.
that's yeah. I think I told that story on here
Yeah,
before.
you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My borrower has a different mailing address too.
Yeah.
So,
So, and on this one, I'm like, also, I said the guy needed $1,000 to reinstate 4 months ago. The payment's $400 a month. The guy still doesn't have $1,000. It's 4 months later. Like, if you do the math, you should have close to $2,000 now, not 1,000. So, but yeah, and unfortunately,
yeah.
I was using an attorney in the state that started the case, that I got a referral from somebody. And now I use a different attorney in the state. North Carolina is still one of those states where I still haven't found a good attorney in North Carolina. Honestly, I've gone through several. They just seem very slow. So I'm just trying 4 different ones right now in North Carolina to see who I like. And, I've got referrals from people who, you know, from this person who's like, everyone's, oh, I talk to him because he's got all these referrals. And it's like, he does, but the ones he has aren't the greatest in certain states. Use another company that was in many states, but they actually outsource it to somebody. I mean, yeah, North Carolina's been, and I know somebody posted in the
Mm-hmm.
group, like certain people and, who to use in North Carolina. And, I've used every one of them, and that's in that list. And to date, I haven't
Mm-hmm.
been super impressed. So,
Yeah.
so I guess Jamie, roll into, so those are your goals. I think
Mm-hmm.
every quarter I'm gonna poke you like the bear and be like, okay, where are you, where are you, where are you, on your goals, to see where you're at and if you're on targeting. So from that perspective, so kind of wrapping up this episode, what are you got a note and bolt this week?
Yeah, I have one, and it has to do with some of the things we've talked about today. So some servicers will not escrow for back taxes. So Madison does not.
I don't think any of
Um,
them do, actually.
okay, so that's what I wasn't sure about.
Mhm.
um, Somebody said in the Facebook group that FCI did. Um,
You have to advance them, and then they will start collecting on them. Like I have one that I just advanced, so now as part of their they added it as their escrow payment, or it's now an increase, it's an added charge to the account. So I had somebody who had their escrow is $200 a month. I advanced $1,200 in taxes. Now their escrow payment is like 300.
so they will adjust for that based. They will escrow for it if it's
if
advanced.
if if the loan documents allow for it,
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah,
they will. That's
right.
another
That's
kicker
key.
is,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's the one thing people are like, I'm like, what does the mortgage and note say? Because that's
right.
really, it's what takes priority. Does past due payments take precedent over, current principal and interest? It's
Mm-hmm.
all in those documents.
Right. That's a good point. It's not always just based on the servicer. They have to follow what the documents say.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my note and bold, is that most servicers, or Madison specifically, I know, does not escrow for back taxes. So you may buy a performing note that has 2 years of taxes due. Well, just factor that into your bid price, because you may be the one paying for that up front, at least. So something to keep in mind when you're shopping servicers or reading through the documents, like you said.
Mhm. So, so my note and bolt kind of, and this, this is the gray area of the business that, you can't teach. And it's really kind of, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, I guess. But I had a deal where, um, unfortunately, the borrower was in poor health, uh, couldn't afford the property, and eventually we were going through a foreclosure, and it did have equity in it. And we had a foreclosure date several months ago. I think it was in October, and the borrower was attempting to sell the property prior because they get more money typically at a sale than they would at foreclosure.
Mm-hmm.
I know is true. Um, so the getting ready to so there was a buyer on the line, and basically they're supposed to close before the foreclosure sale, and they were basically it was really close. So the attorneys, like, I think, the attorney and I were talking, and we're like, yeah, we think they're legit. They kind of researched who's buying it, and they have done fix and flips and stuff like this in the past. So it was investors. So we canceled the foreclosure sale, and they were supposed to close like the day after. Well, this was October, and the day after turned into you know a hard money lender bail. This happened, that happened, everything. And there was some stuff that occurred during that time that I won't get into on I'll say public, this being broadcast publicly.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of gave us some cause for concern on how certain things were being handled. So uh, they had, so come, we reschedule after like a week. We're like, you know what, we're just going to reschedule the sale. If they close before it, great. If they don't, we have the sale. Because the other thing we wanted to do is, the borrower is very ill, and if something, were to happen to the borrower, then all of a sudden you get kicked into probate, and that, all of a sudden everything kind of just
Mm-hmm.
stops. So we had that in mind as well. So, it's supposed to close end of October, doesn't. Supposed to close before Thanksgiving, doesn't. Supposed to close right after Thanksgiving, doesn't. Supposed to close the day before the foreclosure sale, it doesn't. So basically, we had told the buyer, like, sales at 11 o'clock. If we don't have the funds by that point in time, sorry, so forth. So, you know, they send a note, and there's a long comical story to this too. They send like something, wire transfer at 10:15, but it wasn't. It was like a screenshot, but it didn't authorize the wire transfer. It's like, okay, it's like you put it in your banking system, and like it basically said, that's all it really was a screenshot.
So
And
this is the day of the
this
foreclosure
is
sale, but
45,
also the day they're supposed to close to buy it.
45. Well, they had actually signed all the paperwork the
Okay.
night before,
Okay.
but we still were not confident in them closing. There's
Mm-hmm.
just because they signed the paperwork, which they said they signed last time as well,
Mm-hmm.
that
Right.
people actually had the money. So at 10:15, the title company says they have the money, but they didn't have that. It did not appear they did. Then they appeared to show a wire that wasn't a wire going through to my servicer. So basically, we're like, we're not canceling because we had zero trust in the people involved in this transaction
Yeah.
that
You're not
were
going to cancel the foreclosure sale. You're going to keep the
correct.
foreclosure.
Yep.
Right.
Because, and if so, here's how it could play out. We cancel, they wire, great. I get paid off pretty much. We were getting paid off either way. We get paid off
Mm-hmm.
immediately. We don't, um, and we cancel, something happens to the borrower, basically I'm probably another 6 months a year before anything happens. So that's a risk. Do I get the money? If I'm not, like, I mean, the guy is literally in the hospital with, organs failing. So kind of give you an idea,
Wow.
um,
Jeez.
this is what they were saying anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or, we go through the foreclosure and I get my money maybe 3-4 months from now. While it still technically collects interest during that time as well because of how it works. So, um, you know, 5 minutes before, the attorney sends like a message like, "What is going on?" They're like, "It's coming, it's coming," and it doesn't. Doesn't come. So we foreclose. Money did come probably in 40, maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes later. Um, so we mentioned to the servicer, hey, send the money back. This is comical because they servicer reverses the wire. So the hard, so all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, like there was a hard money lender involved in this who gets
Mm-hmm.
very upset with the title company and stuff. But title companies yelling at the servicer, basically saying like wires are instantaneous. We should have our money back. We want our money back. We're going to sue. Basically threatening lawsuits against the servicer, like and so forth. Which is kind of ironic because I'm sitting there reading this like, okay, if wires are instantaneous, and you said you had the money from the hard money lender at like 9 o'clock that morning, why couldn't you wire it before 11?
Right.
So forth. But so we end up being like,
Wires that they receive are instantaneous, not the ones they send.
oh, actually, I mean, that is complete BS because wires are
Yeah,
not instantaneous.
it can take several hours
Actually, if you go on a
or
website,
more.
it says it can take several days for a wire.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it typically happens, and so here's the other thing, um, and the bank is a bank I use all the time. If you go put a wire in the system, like if I wired you money right now,
Mm-hmm.
one has to get manager approval, which will get sent. And then they confirm the money's in my account, nothing's been withdrawn. And in your account, it's going to show up as pending. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
immediate access to that money either. And when it's
Yeah.
still pending, it's there, but technically it's still like we think it's there, but it's not a finalized transaction. So something
Right.
could still go wrong. And when you're dealing with, six-figure numbers, we wanted to make sure, and again, it wasn't even that it was pending. The money, they didn't even have a
It
wire
wasn't even
transfer.
approved.
They didn't have
Like.
a wire transfer number. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's the transfer number? And I share that story because, this is the stuff along note and bolt. For some reason, I just like to talk, as you know. But it's just these are the things that can happen in the business. That okay, what is my risk? The upside was I could get paid off that day or the following day, but there's a history of potential risk and liability. The worst case is, that was best case. Worst case is I cancel this and all of a sudden something happens and then I might not get paid off for a very long time. The
Mm-hmm.
middle situation was I foreclose. We know it's going to sell for more. I'm getting my money, and I know basically a time frame of when the foreclosure will get approved. And for me, I played it as I took that middle option because I did not want to risk the two other ends of the spectrum, either immediate or now, because at the end of the day, too, it's not like I needed that money like today to all of a sudden go do something else. If the money now, from
Mm-hmm.
the foreclosure sale to when it ends, I think it's 9% interest. That's still a nice return over the next 3 months where I don't have any place I'd probably be putting that money right now that would get me that 9%. So now I also know when I'm going to be getting that money
Mm-hmm.
roughly. I can start planning how I'm going to invest it in my next go around. So make sense? What would
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, and if you, yeah, if you, oh, can you, I
I
think
hear you.
can
No,
you
I
hear
hear you.
me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Um, it was breaking up a little bit. So, um, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I hear you.
Oh, it keeps locking up.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, plus you don't know if, politically, you don't know if you cancel the foreclosure sale, who knows if they reinstitute foreclosure moratorium, in that state or what happens. So
Mhm,
there's just more knowns with going forward with it and
mhm.
more constants, and you have a little more control than canceling the foreclosure sale. So I think with knowing what you knew at that point, it made a lot of sense. Looking back, I mean, maybe you wish you'd had gone through with the
Mhm.
sale and gotten paid, right? So, but you didn't know that.
Yeah,
How
and
I think it makes total sense what you
yeah, and
decided to do.
there's a history on this as well that I can't get into details on. That we were very skeptical, about because let's just say some things were not done above board, and you know,
Hmm.
from that perspective. I won't go into, the details of it, but um, certain things were done that we became aware of because they thought that my attorney was the borrower's attorney and not my attorney, and may have left a voice message on something which was very let's just say was not above the board. So right then and there, any confidence or faith kind of was out the window. So,
Hmm.
but,
Yeah. So you'll get paid in a few months now, right?
yep,
Is that what you're saying?
yes. So, yep, that is what I am saying.
Gotcha.
So, okay, Jamie, anything else as we wrap up this episode?
So the oh,
Yeah, I still hear you.
I'm good to go.
Okay, good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of Good Deeds Law
Okay.
Investing
Yeah,
Podcast.
it's definitely slowing down.